Hey everyone, this took a bit longer to make than I expected, but welcome to the first video in a series where we'll be remaking and improving everything from the Gun Gale Online project in Unreal Engine 4. Now in that game you couldn't drop your weapons. They were basically glued to your hands. Which is fine if you're making a game like Pistol Whip or Beat Saber, but for a shooter we're going to want a bit more freedom. So, today we're going to go over how to properly pick things up, making them actually snap to your hand instead of just awkwardly floating in the wrong direction, as well as how to interact with them, so that when you press a button on your controller, they do stuff. These two things are going to be the basis for most of the objects you make in VR, so I figured it'd be a good place to start. Hopping over to the Unreal VR template, first we're going to need something to pick up. So let's make a new object based off of these grabbable cubes over here. To find them, you can either navigate your content browser by going down here and clicking Content, Virtual Reality BP, Blueprints, and there they are under BP Pickup Cube. Or, the much easier way is simply right-click one in the world, and you can hit Browse to Asset, it'll bring you right to where you need to go. Either way, once you find it, just right-click and hit Duplicate, and we'll name this BP Saber, as this is what we'll be turning into a lightsaber handle over the next few videos. Once you've done that, just double-click your new Saber BP, and it'll bring you to a window that looks like this. Up towards the top there's a few tabs. I'm going to click the one called Viewport. From here you should be able to see the cube. You can click on that, and here's where you could change your static mesh. So over on the right there's this drop down menu and you can pick any model, whether it's a gun or a lantern, flashlight. But to keep it simple, we're not going to worry about that today. Instead we're just going to squish this cube down a bit so it's a bit more handle shaped. To do that, you go up here to Transform and change the scale. So we want to make it smaller on the X and Y. We'll go like 0.05. And we'll leave the Z at 0.2. That seems like a pretty good size. Once you've done that, just hit Compile and Save. So now you've made the model for your handle, but if you were to pick it up now, it wouldn't snap to your hands right. It just kind of floats. So let's fix that. We need to decide where we want the object to snap to, which we can figure out by opening up our BP motion controller, found here in the same folder that those cubes were in. Double click that and hop over to the Viewport tab again. From here you should see something like this. Just zoom in a bit to get a better view, and then select your hand mesh from this hierarchy on the left. Once you've done that, look for this setting called Animation Mode. We're going to change this to Use Animation Asset, and then under Anim to Play, we're going to select our grab animation called Mannequin Hand Right Grab. This should make your hand close into a fist. And then go back to this hierarchy on the left, but this time select Motion Controller. And press Add Component up here. If you were using a different model, we would add a static mesh, but since our handle is just a cube, we can simply type cube. And you will immediately notice that it is way too big. So just go over to the scale on the right and set it to the same size that we did for our handle, which was 0.05 on the first two values, and 0.2 on the third one. And now we have a perfect copy of our little handle model. From here you can take this and move it to exactly where you want to grip it. Really take your time with this and get it in a spot where you're happy with it. I also suggest tilting the handle forward a little bit, as it tends to feel more natural, since that's how the controllers sit in your hand. But that could be personal preference. Once you've got it to where you want it, just save this, and hop back over to our Saber blueprint, where we're going to add a couple things to our event graph. Now don't be intimidated by how this looks, this part is actually super easy. Just go to this big box at the end here that says Attach Component to Component, and you'll see a few drop-down menus. Change the location and rotation rules to Snap to Target. The scale you can leave alone. Then just drag off of this little white arrow here, and look for Set Relative Location and Rotation Static Mesh Component right here. All you have to do now is go back to your BP motion controller where you made that fake handle, make sure it's selected, and then copy the numbers from these boxes over here to the boxes over here. So we'll copy the X, paste it in the X, copy the Y location, put it in the Y, copy the Z, and then same deal for the rotation. However, when you try to paste over the rotation, you might notice that it won't let you. That's just because you copied this little degree symbol here. If you tap backspace and delete that, it'll paste in just fine. Once you're absolutely sure that you've copied all the numbers over right, you can compile and save your BP Saber, and then go into your motion controller. You can delete this fake handle now. You don't need it anymore. But you can either click its mesh or select it in the hierarchy here, just tap delete. You also need to put your hand animations back to normal, so select your hand mesh up here, go back to this animation mode, and switch it back to use animation blueprint. Compile and save, and now you should be done. So we'll test this out. Grab our BP Saber, just drag it into the world here, then go up here to the play button, hit VR preview, and now it snaps right where it's supposed to. For a lot of objects, you can be done right here, but we want ours to know when we push buttons, so you can turn the lightsaber on and off, or fire a gun whenever you pull the trigger. So let's set that up real quick. First, we're going to go to our project settings and add our inputs. So just go up to Edit, Project Settings. Then on the left, under Engine, go down till you find Input, and open up our action mappings right here. And add a new one by hitting this little plus button. We'll call this Trigger Left. Then on this drop-down menu, find whatever motion controller you're using. In my case, it's the Oculus Touch. And there's the left trigger input right there. Oculus Touch L trigger. Add another one, this time trigger right, and do the same thing, but find the right trigger. There it is. Okay, we're done here. Next, you need to open up your Pickup Actor interface, which is right here, same folder as everything else. Double-click that, and on the right you'll see a couple functions called Pick Up and Drop. We're going to hit this little plus button here to add two new ones. One being Trigger Pressed, and one Trigger Released. And that's all you need to do here. So just compile, save, and we're almost done. Next, you need to open up this motion controller pawn. This isn't the BP motion controller from earlier, it is a separate thing. And we're going to add a couple things to this event graph. It doesn't matter too much where you do this, but I'm going to put it near the other controller inputs just to keep things organized. If you right-click and search Trigger Left, there's an event for that input you just made. Add that, as well as the one for Trigger Right, and then get your left controller and right controller, which we'll just copy from over here. Drag off of that left controller, and look for Get Attached Actor. This one. Then drag off of that, and you can find the Trigger Pressed function that you made. Connect the node that says Pressed over here to the input on this. What you have now is when you press the left trigger, it's going to look at your left controller, look at the thing in its hand, and then tell that thing that you've pressed the trigger. And then you want the same thing for when it releases the trigger. So just drag off of this node here again, look up Trigger Released, and connect that to this released node here. And then you're going to want to do the exact same thing for the right controller. So just copy this stuff, paste it down here, and hook the nodes where they're supposed to go. So right controller to here, pressed to here, released to here, and now you're done with this part. So compile and save. All we have to do now is go back in our Saber BP real quick, and we're going to add a couple events here. So right click, look for Event Trigger Pressed, and again for Event Trigger released. Now we'll just drag off of these and say print string for now. So whenever it detects that the trigger was pressed, it's going to say hello. Same thing here, drag off, print string, and when the trigger's released, it'll say goodbye. Compile and save this, go back to your map, and we can check if it works. Now you can see up in the left, when I press the trigger, it says hello. When I let go, it says goodbye. And this works in either hand. So basically, this is how all your objects are going to work, except instead of printing a message, it'll fire a bullet, turn a lightsaber on, or whatever else you would use buttons for. Hopefully you found this video useful. I'm still quite new to this kind of thing, so if I went a bit too fast or slow at parts, let me know so I can improve on that. Anything I can do to make these tutorials as helpful as possible. Next video we'll work on some blade effects to make this handle into a proper lightsaber. If that's something that interests you, consider subbing to stay up to date. Till next time.